All right, we're back after a week off of the UFC for UFC Vegas 46. Sean Strickland taking on Jack Hermansson in the middleweight division. Pretty good main event. Honestly, this whole card does not have a lot of name value, but it's a great card as far as from an entertainment perspective, a lot of close fights. From a betting perspective, a lot of opportunities to dive on some pretty closely lined fights here. The matchmaking is really good for not having a lot of name value. Not even the most talented fighters. A lot of UFC debutants, once again. Some guys that are kind of on the chopping block of their UFC career. But a lot of very closely lined fights. And I see a lot of underdogs that I think have a pretty good chance of coming through on this card. But not all of them are going to come through. We got to kind of pick and choose, figure out which ones we like, which ones we don't. And I'm excited to dive into it. 13 fight card. Sam Alvey, unfortunately, out of the fight with, well, more accurately, Phil Hawes is out of the fight with Sam Alvey. Looks like there was a short notice replacement that was just announced within a few hours ago. So we'll take a look at that as well. But so far, 13 fights. Hopefully most stay intact. But let's get on into it. Okay, kicking off the card, we've got a flyweight bout between Malcolm Gordon and Dennis Bondar. Dennis Bondar making his debut, and when I was looking at the bout sheet for this fight card, I was kind of like, why do I know this name? Has he been in the UFC before? But I realized he had a fight against Victor Rodriguez, he had a fight against Ode Osborne, and was already listed to fight Malcolm Gordon all in the past, several months, and those bouts just fizzled through. So finally, he's got Malcolm Gordon. They're about a willing dance partner in this, debut. So you couldn't really ask for a better debut in the cage than Malcolm Gordon, because the guy's kind of perceived as being a pretty chinny guy for bantamweight and flyweight. A division where they don't really pack the most power. He's still getting knocked out a handful of times on the regional scene, as well as Submuderji knocked him out in the UFC. Within a minute. And then it didn't get much better, because right before that, he had gotten submitted in round one by Amir Albazi. And, he was kind of fighting for his job in his last fight, but he was kind of given a layup of an opponent and able to squeak out a decision there. So, you can take from that fight what you will. Dennis Bondar, he's got very impressive finishing ability, a pretty general range of skills. And if you look at, I was able to look at most of his regional scene fights. It looks very impressive, but the level of talent that he's facing is just not very convincing to gain a lot from. This will be a very big test, oddly enough, thinking that Malcolm Gordon will be a big test for anybody in the UFC, but this will be a big test for Dennis Bondar. See if he can dispose of Malcolm Gordon the way that he's disposed of the regional scene opponents he's had to face so far. Now, that looks like a clear path to victory. Dennis Bondar, a guy with a lot of inside the distance finishes. Malcolm Gordon, a guy who's more chinny than most of the guys in the flyweight roster right now. But where I do feel like Malcolm Gordon is being disrespected as the line is minus 260 in climbing for Dennis Bondar. I just think it's a little bit ridiculous against a guy like Malcolm Gordon who had a very successful run on the Canadian regional scene. I mean, not a bad record at all, 13-5. He's getting dusted in the UFC a little bit, but, Amir Albazi, not a pretty good opponent in hindsight. And Submuderji, a very crafty striker as well. So, it's just, you got to look at the tape study. When you look at Malcolm Gordon, he's willing to let his opponent lead the dance of the fight. He backs up. His defense to a lot of the strikes is this really high guard where strikes still get in. Even with his high guard, he's letting uppercuts slip through the middle. He's letting strikes go to the sides of his head, and he just eats body shots. I mean, Amir Albazi was able to take him down rather easily with a single leg takedown. So, this kind of does look like a binary fight where, like, if Malcolm Gordon can ground Dennis Bondar, maybe he'll have success. Some of the regional scene tape that I saw on Dennis Bondar showed him getting kind of out-transitioned in some grappling sequences, but, you never know. It was a while ago, and I feel like we haven't seen the ceiling of Dennis Bondar, but we may have seen the ceiling for Malcolm Gordon. So give me Dennis Bondar to win. But at a minus 260 or worse price tag for a UFC debutant, I can't do that against Malcolm Gordon. I do think the line is disrespectful. But give me Dennis Bondar to win by second round TKO. Okay, next up we've got Jailton Almeida making his UFC debut. Another one of these guys that is off of the Dana White Contender Series, having a successful run on that. and now getting a contract on the big stage. He's taking on Danilo Marquez. And both of these guys, right off the bat, they are just huge for 205. Danilo Marquez is 6'6", pretty large frame to him. Jailton Almeida, he looks more like a slender 205, but man, another big guy, and he's just one of these jacked Brazilians that USADA is probably going to be looking to drug test quite often. But yeah, I like both of these guys, and both of them, as big as they are, they're both jiu-jitsu practitioners. Obviously, Danilo Marquez, that's his main bread and butter, is just trying to hang on to his opponent however he can. Half of the time, he looks like a Brazilian heavyweight version of, you know, Damian Maia out there. So, I mean, look at the Kennedy and Zechuku fight, where he just basically spent rounds 1 and 2 just trying to hang off of Kennedy's back, trying desperately to get control time and find a submission wherever he could. Unsuccessful in that fight. And his cardio is kind of questionable as well. It's looked better as of late, but it's been questionable in the past. Jailton Almeida, one of these guys, quick finisher. Gets a lot of quick early fight submission wins. And as we saw in the Contender Series, his striking actually looked really good, but we saw very little of it because he's always spamming these takedowns. Very much like Danilo Marquez, trying to get it to the ground. So at a minus like 400 plus price tag here against Danilo Marquez, I mean, Jailton Almeida is he's the biggest favorite on the card, and he's making his debut. And the way that he finds the success is the same way that Danilo Marquez wants the fight to go. Danilo Marquez would love to get taken down and be able to work the fight in his own realm, which is also jiu-jitsu. So that bothers me a bit that somebody this big of a favorite is coming and making their debut, and their way to success in a fight is the same way that their opponent wants to have success in the fight. So that all bothers me. It leads me to believe that there might be a big upset here, but I'm not willing to jump in front of the explosivity, the just the pure power and strength of Jailton Almeida. And he did look very competent in the striking that we have seen from him. He does have a couple striking finishes on his record as well. I think he's the more dangerous guy on the feet, and I think he will win this fight. But at minus 400, we're talking about an 80% chance that a UFC newcomer beats somebody that wants to take the fight to the exact same place that, you know, the newcomer wants to take it too, which is on the ground. So I feel very funny about a lot of things. I'm smelling a bit of an upset that might happen here, but I just can't bet against Danilo Marquez. I do think that Almeida is young enough to make some changes to his game. Hopefully we see more of the striking on the feet, which I think he has a big discrepancy in, you know, just he's got a huge advantage on the feet, but we just rarely ever see it. So it's just, I'm making an assumption and assuming that he'll start striking to get the best of Danilo Marquez, but that would be the smarter game plan in my opinion. So give me Jailton Almeida to get, to get a late finish in this fight. I'd say maybe when Danilo Marquez gasses out, Jailton Almeida hopefully still has some gas left in his tank and gets a either round 2 or round 3 TKO victory. All right, up next we have a bantamweight women's bout. Alexis Davis taking on Julia Stoliarenko. And man, this is a fight where I think, so far, I think the lines have been inaccurate for the first 2 fights, but I think the lines are pretty accurate here with Alexis Davis being about a minus 220, minus 230 favorite. They come back on Julia Stoliarenko like plus 180-ish. So, I mean, that's pretty fair. And honestly, there might be a little bit of value, in my opinion, on Alexis Davis. I know her record is probably the only thing keeping that back from her being a bigger favorite. She's dropped a lot of losses lately, but she's like fallen into this, like, you know, kind of gritty veteran of the women's division, gatekeeper type role. So she's dropping a lot of decisions, but they're to kind of the better offerings that the bantamweight division has. She did have that win over Sabina Mazo, you know, pretty decisive fight there. You'd expect that almost from somebody with the experience of Alexis Davis. And that's what this comes down to. I mean, Alexis Davis is like double the amount of pro fights as Stoliarenko. She's faced, you know, the top of what the bantamweight division has had. And she just has all of that experience. And Julia Stoliarenko is just not impressive at all. Alexis Davis should have the stand-up edge here by a mile. unless she gets armbarred in round 1, I don't see Stoliarenko having much success in this fight. She'll probably be trying to desperately to get takedowns. Her takedown accuracy is pretty abysmal. She's flopping to her back in certain fights, just trying desperately to get her opponent to follow her to the ground. So I don't see Alexis Davis with her veteran savvy falling for any of those things. I think she'll outpoint Stoliarenko on her way to a pretty decisive 30-27 decision. So, yeah, not much to say on this one. I think the line's accurate. There might be some value on Alexis Davis. In fact, let me look at the Alexis Davis by decision prop. Alexis Davis by points, -110. That might not be a bad way to play this. Getting -110 on the most likely path to victory for Alexis Davis by decision. So that's my pick for this. No bet on this fight, though. I don't trust either of these two with my money. So moving on, we have Phillip Rowe taking on Jason Witt. And, this is a fun fight just from, when these guys square off, it might look like they're a weight class apart just because Phillip Rowe is so tall for this division. He is 6'3" with an 80-inch reach. Coming back on Jason Witt, who has 70-inch reach, 5'10". So pretty crazy to have these kind of stats at 170 as Phillip Rowe. And it's definitely going to help him out in this fight where he has a clear striking advantage, in my opinion. He's got some pretty nice Muay Thai. He's got some, knees up the middle. Some pretty really linear strikes, and I think his long reach is definitely going to help him out, keeping his distance from Jason Witt, who is more of a power wrestler and is going to try to engage and get close to Phillip Rowe and dump him on his back. Which, honestly, now if you look at the opposite side of the coin and see how Phillip Rowe's tall frame is going to work against him with a power wrestler like Jason Witt, when his Phillip Rowe with the nice high hips, I think it'll be easy to dump to the ground. And, a pretty good wrestler like Jason Witt, I think, could expose that and use that height against him. But, lately we've seen in the past few fights, Jason Witt's durability is not looking the greatest. He's had two pretty bad knockouts, one to Takashi Sato and one to Matthew Semmelsberger, both pretty early. So, there are durability questions. Is his chin holding up? So that's probably going to be the determining factor of me picking against him in this fight. I think Phillip Rowe has shown pretty good power, pretty good ability to get the striking accuracy going. He's a little bit slow to warm up, but once round 2 comes, he seems to kind of gotten the timing down, kind of read his opponent, and he's got a wide variety of strikes that he likes to employ. Like I said, those knees up the middle, nice linear striking, and I think that 10-inch reach is just going to be a little bit too much for Jason Witt to handle in this bout. And ultimately, that huge frame is going to be why I pick Phillip Rowe to win this fight. So I'm gonna pick Phillip Rowe by TKO round 2. As far as the odds go for this fight, Phillip Rowe has slowly climbed to being around a -150. Minus even as high as -160. I'm seeing the trends going for a favorite in this fight. I think that's warranted. I think people are liking what they're seeing in Phillip Rowe and just how the stats match up, and I totally agree with that. Looking inside the distance, if you get by Phillip Rowe by KO TKO, I'm predicting it's around +200, +225. So that might be worth a sprinkle on as well. But yeah, give me Phillip Rowe by second round TKO. Okay, up next we got a fun matchup. Chidi Njokuani making his UFC debut at long last, taking on Marc-Andre Barriault. And Chidi Njokuani, obviously the younger brother of the longtime WEC and UFC veteran Anthony Njokuani, who unfortunately just tried to get a win in his old age over there in Eagle FC over the weekend and got a loss. But we'll see if his younger brother can get the clout back on the family name of Njokuani, and he's got a pretty good chance of doing that. 33 years old, 6'3" with an 80-inch reach. I mean, this guy is a pro kickboxer, BJJ black belt, and he's fought everywhere from RFC to LFA to Bellator, and he's had wins over some legitimate competition. So a lot of experience coming into the UFC. It's almost like one of these journeyman fighters like Victor Henry or Chris Curtis, like some of these guys, dare I say, even like a Yuri Prohaska, where they fought a lot of tough competition, proven themselves outside of the organization, and then finally come in when they have a lot of experience under their belt. So he's got a lot of paths to victory here. Obviously, standing, he looks the best. Long, rangy kicks, very good strikes. Marc-Andre Barriault, he's got fundamental striking, but, at 185, he's just, he's one of these more power grappler type of guys trying to get the fight to the ground. And his, fight to fight, his skill set kind of looks almost predictable in a way. He lost his first 3 fights, but now he's bounced back and won his last 3. I believe there's a no contest for, bandana Malik or something in there. So turning his career around, I like what I see from him. I really do. And I think that something that's going to give Njokuani trouble is, of course, it's always been a guy who's able to ground him, get up close, stuff those kicks, and able to get him onto his back and just secure time. And I think that's something that Marc-Andre Barriault's going to do in this fight. I think he's going to be the minute winner if he can get it to the ground. And I think that all of the kicking and all of the kick attempts from Njokuani, which he does throw very nice flashy kicks and very effective kicks as well, I think Marc-Andre is going to be able to pressure inside and probably get a takedown off of one of those kicks and secure a lot of ground time. I think that Njokuani's output is going to be more than Barriault on the feet. So he's going to want to get Njokuani back into the cage as fast as he can, Marc-Andre, and then eventually get him to the ground and start being active. I want to see him more active on top. So if he can be more active on top control on the mat, that'll probably secure him around. Now, I really do feel like this will be a close fight. I think there's a good argument, and the line indicates that it is a 50-50 fight. So I agree with the line where it is. I don't know how you can have much confidence one way or another in this fight. I'm excited to watch it, but I do think that Marc-Andre Barriault will win this fight. I think 2-1. I think he'll win, a pretty greasy 29-28 decision over Njokuani. I think it'll be one of those frustrating matches where you just want to see Njokuani get back to his feet and employ some of that flashy, effective striking of his. But I think for at least the better half of one round and maybe the entirety of another round, I think he'll be able to ground Njokuani and just stay active enough on top and not get stood back up. And I think he'll win the fight that way and get a pretty clear-cut but frustrating decision over the debuting Njokuani. So give me Marc-Andre Barriault by a close decision. Next up, we got Hakeem Dawodu taking on Michael Trizano, featherweight bout. I like Hakeem Dawodu in this spot, I really do. And, both guys, 30 years old, 5'8" for Dawodu, 5'11" for Trizano, but Dawodu actually maintaining 73-inch reach, 2 inches over his opponent, Mike Trizano. So Trizano coming over kind of a fraudulent win, in my opinion. I really do think that Ludovic Klein won that fight against Mike Trizano. The judges saw it differently. They gave it to Mike Trizano, but, at that point, I was really high on Ludovic Klein, and I did think he won that fight quite clearly. But, close fight, and Mike Trizano, all due respect, he took a lot of adversity in that fight. I mean, he showed his durability, and, so leading into this fight, I don't think durability is going to be an issue for either guy. Neither one been finished by strikes in their career. I think Hakeem Dawodu is just the cleaner striker. I think he has more striking volume, more diversity, more output in his strikes. And where he normally suffers is at the hands of somebody who can employ a grapple-heavy game and challenge him on the ground. That's where he's, had the close split decisions with. He just lost at the hands of Movsar Evloev. No shame there. But I don't think where he suffers in his MMA game, I don't think that Mike Trizano presents those same problems. So, Trizano not ever having a durability issue. He displayed his toughness in his last fight. I think that Hakeem Dawodu just cruises to a pretty decisive victory. Stand-up battle in the feet. There might be some moments for Mike Trizano optically. He might land some strong strikes that might get through over the course of 15 minutes. But I think Hakeem Dawodu is a veteran enough right now. I think he's got the experience edge by far. And I think he's just going to cruise to nice 30-27 unanimous decision. So give me Hakeem Dawodu by decision. And as far as the odds go for this fight, I think they're pretty spot on, honestly. I think, let's see here. We're looking at a -165 for Dawodu at the best price you can get. That's climbing to even as high as -200. The comeback, Mike Trizano, right around +150, +160. That's fair. I think the line is pretty on point. Money line, there might be a little bit of value, in my opinion, on Hakeem Dawodu. But since I don't see an apparent durability issue for Mike Trizano, and I think it will be Dawodu by decision. Let's see what that price tag is. Why can't I find it on here? What am I looking at? Oh, Hakeem Dawodu by decision plus 120, plus 105. Truly, I don't know. If I were to bet Dawodu, I would take the money line on this fight, and I might do it. I'm pretty solid on this pick. So give me Hakeem Dawodu. I'd bet the money line. If anything, by decision isn't juicy enough for me to risk 15 minutes of these guys in a stand-up battle with each other. Anything could happen. Not a whole lot of data on either guy, honestly, especially Mike Trizano. They both look pretty tough, so give me Hakeem Dawodu by decision. Okay, up next, the fun bantamweight bout between Miles Johns and John Castaneda. Right now, the odds are sitting somewhere between like a minus 250 for Miles Johns in some places, all the way to a plus 200 for John Castaneda at the high and low ends of those price tags, which, underdog price anywhere between 170 and 200 on John Castaneda. I find that to be just a crazy underrating of his game. I think he's got a very good chance of winning this fight. I really do. I think his striking is clean. I like his... I think Miles Johns is very open to counters from John Castaneda, and as Miles Johns tries to mix in grappling to his game, I think sometimes he's going to be open up to the counters of John Castaneda. And Castaneda, both of these guys have displayed their power in their past performances. John Castaneda knocking out Eddie Wineland at the end of round 1 in his last bout, and now Miles Johns, the grappler, is falling in love with his hands, knocking out both Kevin Natividad and Anderson Dos Santos. So both of these guys can stand and bang. I think Miles Johns has a bit of a power advantage, but Castaneda is going to have the output and striking advantage as far as just constantly winning minutes on the feet. But what I worry about for Castaneda is I worry that Miles Johns might have some of the more eye-catching shots for the judges. I think that if Castaneda touches him up with some some inside-outside leg kicks, sticking him with the jab, I think sometimes that'll be countered with Miles Johns with like a strong overhand or, things like that, or just these thudding shots that I think will be more eye-catching for the judges. Sometimes that happens, and I think that might be an issue. But like I said, Miles Johns, if he tries to enter the grappling realm, sometimes when he does that, he leaves himself open to the counters. So I could see him catching a knee, going in for a takedown, things like that. So, it's a very, very close fight. So I think that there is value on John Castaneda as if he's getting up to that plus 200 range as far as an underdog price goes. I think there's a lot of value on Castaneda edging out a decision. I think both guys are durable enough. I know Miles Johns, his only loss was by a knockout, but that was a flying knee for Mario Batista. These things happen. I'm not too worried about the durability of either guy in this fight. But just edging out, I think one guy's going to get 2 rounds and the other one's going to get 1. I think it's going to be one of those 29-28 decisions. Where do I fall on that? It's tough. I really do think that I just have a gut feeling that Miles Johns is going to have the more eye-catching shots in this fight. And, if he's able to mix in, he doesn't go to it too much in the UFC, but if he's able to finally go in and mix in some takedowns. I know that Castaneda I think he's like a BJJ brown belt, so he's competent enough to stay defensively sound on the ground, but I think Miles Johns can ground him, mix in takedowns when he needs to in this fight, and just have the more eye-catching, minute-winning approach to this fight. So give me Miles Johns by a close decision. Not my most confident pick on the card, but that's what I'm taking in this bout. Okay, up next we got Julian Erosa taking on Steven Peterson. And this is just odd. When I saw this fight listed for the card, I thought it was a very strange matchup. It doesn't seem equivalent that, Steven Peterson defeats Chase Hooper by decision and Julian Erosa defeats Charles Jourdain by, submission. It just seems odd that these two be matched, but what are you going to do? So now we have Julian Erosa as like a huge minus 300 favorite. Steven Peterson to come back around like plus 230 to plus 250 underdog range. as much as I don't want Julian Erosa to be that big of a favorite over anybody in this division, I just think that it's pretty much to be expected just because he's got so much finishing potential. The measurables, striking accuracy, striking, knockdowns per minute, total strikes attempted per minute, takedowns, takedown defense. I think everything is pretty much in the favor of Julian Erosa, leaving Steven Peterson's just like kind of like a puncher's chance, which is live, but when you just leave somebody with the only measurable path to victory is a puncher's chance, you end up with this giant inflated line that we have. And, I pretty much agree with it. So, pretty short and sweet. I think Julian Erosa gets this done. Steven Peterson, a pretty durable guy, pretty durable. He was able to, show some defensive fight IQ on the ground against Chase Hooper at least. So we have that. I could see Julian Erosa finishing this fight by strikes, but I don't have the data to support Steven Peterson being that susceptible to, being knocked out. I certainly have the data to support Julian Erosa questioning his durability and his chin. He's been finished so many times, but I'm going to pick Julian Erosa to win a clear-cut 30-27 decision over Steven Peterson. Okay, I think we're now in the main card now. I think they put this all the way up there. This is Treyshawn Gore taking on Bryan Battle. Now, this is actually the fight that was supposed to be the Ultimate Fighter finale, but Treyshawn Gore out for an injury for that, so Bryan Battle was able to go in there against Gilbert Urbina and get the victory and win the tough finale. Now, this is kind of like the real tough finale because Treyshawn Gore is back. They're running this fight back as they should, and I don't understand the betting line for this fight, to be honest with you, because Treyshawn Gore is 3-0 outside of the exhibition matches on the show. It just a stunning lack of experience because Bryan Battle not only has a professional career in MMA before the show, but he also has an amateur career as well. And I just feel like that all of that experience is being dismissed. We're talking about a guy that won under the bright lights of an actual UFC event against a guy who's 3-0 making his debut in the organization. And I just don't see the, I know Treyshawn Gore is, very physically gifted. He looks like he's an athletic guy from what we've seen of him, but there's just so little data to support this big line movement. And I do not understand it. We're looking at minus 160 and climbing for Treyshawn Gore against but a plus 140 underdog price for Bryan Battle. So, I almost bet Bryan Battle when it was like, more of a closer to a pick 'em. But I'm glad because I might wait and see how crazy this line gets. It seems like it might have leveled off and maybe like plus 140 was the most we're going to get. Now it's dipping back down to plus 130, plus 135 range. But, man, I'm not confident. I'm not too confident in either guy. And, Treyshawn, there's so much assuming to be made between like how these guys are going to look against each other just because they do have the one common opponent, Gilbert Urbina, that they both finished. But, Treyshawn Gore only having a few fights to look at and the Ultimate Fighter show itself, it just doesn't, I can't make an educated bet on this fight with somebody who has so little experience. So it's a pass betting wise for me. I changed my mind. No matter how crazy this line would get, I probably wouldn't bet Bryan Battle for anything under like a plus 145 if I could find that. But even still, it would just be like a unit bet. I'm going to say give me Bryan Battle. He looks like he's just proven himself. And just based on the experience, I'm going to have to take the more proven guy. But very, 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 very much to learn for both guys. And I'm going to sit back and data collect and see where the future lies for both guys. But for the sake of a pick, give me Bryan Battle by decision. Okay, so this fight was just announced today. So forgive me, I can't really make too confident of a pick on this one. I mean, in some ways I can, but it would be ill-advised to kind of advise betting on this one since it just happened. And I haven't really dove into exactly how these two match up per se. But, I mean, Brandon Allen coming in on short notice against Sam Alvey, who was supposed to take on Phil Hawes. Hawes pulled out, and now Brandon Allen is a willing dance partner for Sam Alvey. He's going to swell up to be like a minus 400 favorite already, probably, is Brandon Allen. On short notice, I think that's crazy. Obviously, the line is going to have to reflect Sam Alvey's, bad luck, all the bad decision losses he's had, and just his performance in the past few years. the guy hasn't had a win since, I think, like 2018. Yeah, fun fact, I was actually there to see Sam Alvey's second professional fight ever. The guy's from, my neck of the woods over in the Midwest. So I didn't know at the time that I saw this young guy come out and absolutely dust the guy in the first round of his second pro fight, just at a local MMA show, that he would be, have the kind of career that he's had. So I've got a lot of respect for Sam Alvey. I would love to see him go out on a win here, but I'm going to have to predict just off the cuff that Brandon Allen wins. Either by a ground and pound finish or by a submission finish by at least round 2 or 3. So that's my prediction for this one. Again, I can't make a very good recommendation on props to play for this just because I haven't dove into the exact matchup yet. It was just announced a few hours ago. But yeah, I'm going to take Brandon Allen to kind of end the reign of Sam Alvey, unfortunately. But there is that part of me that is crossing my fingers hoping that Alvey pulls up the upset win. Okay, we've got a fun welterweight fight up next. Carlston Harris taking on Khamzat Rakhmanov, and these two guys are, very, very explosive prospects. They've really made their mark in the division and, become recognizable names almost to the more diehard MMA fans of the community, because we're so excited to see them try to break into the top 15 of the division. And Khamzat Rakhmanov, undefeated, and he's made quick work of a couple guys in the UFC so far, including Cowboy Oliveira and Michael Pruzeris. Now you can take a look at those impressive wins he's had and kind of dissect them and say, well, Cowboy Oliveira's been finished before many times. Michael Pruzeris, though he was never finished, he's 40 years old at the time he lost. But just the way that he does it through those guys is very impressive. Now, is that impressive enough to warrant a minus 200, minus 250 price tag over a guy like Carlston Harris? I don't think so, but usually you see those lines inflated when the guy is undefeated, and there's never been an opportunity for us to see them, look bad. But if you look back at his pro career before the UFC, there's been at least one instance where he was almost finished and he was kind of saved by the bell. Against regional scene competition, but these things happen. He was able to come back and finish the fight. That's another thing is that I think Carlston Harris is going to have over Khamzat Rakhmanov, is the fact that Carlston Harris has actually been to many decisions before. So he's at least proven that he can go to the final bell and not completely death gas and fall apart. He's able to win on judges' scorecards, and I think that as a young explosive prospect like Khamzat Rakhmanov, that's something we've yet to see, and that worries me a bit. And that's part of why I'm going to pick Carlston Harris to beat him in this fight. Even though I think Khamzat Rakhmanov has the more linear, clean strikes, the more technical striking, you can say. The unorthodox striking seems to work for Carlston Harris. I mean, his ground and pound is just wild, and swinging hammer fists on the ground. He's winged some wild haymaker-like punches, but they seem to work. He's got a very unorthodox style, but he's powerful as hell. And I think it's going to give Khamzat Rakhmanov trouble if it gets out of round 1, if it gets out of round 2. I think that Carlston Harris will win a longer fight. So if there's a timer on Khamzat Rakhmanov and he hasn't been proven to have a high gas tank, what does that look like? Also, Carlston Harris is pretty competent on the ground as well. Both guys are. So, I feel like if there's trouble on the feet for Khamzat Rakhmanov, he might start shooting desperation takedowns on Carlston Harris, and that may not get better for him on the ground. So, give me Carlston Harris to win. I do think this fight ends inside the distance, so give me Carlston Harris by a second or third round TKO. All right, shockingly, this is the co-main event so far. It's listed as for this event. Punahele Soriano versus Nick Maximov. And why I say that's shocking that this is the co-main event is because Nick Maximov, his second fight in the UFC, and his last fight was, the opening prelim on the card or something like that. So I think his affiliation with Nick Diaz, he's fighting out of the Nick Diaz Academy. His affiliation with the Diaz brothers, they're probably trying to make a storyline out of that. And it's a cool storyline. He's got really slick submissions. He competes in grappling tournaments outside of his pro MMA career as well. And Punahele Soriano has probably never faced as good of a submission artist as Nick Maximov, but Nick Maximov certainly has never faced a striker or a well-rounded MMA fighter like Punahele Soriano in his young career. I was impressed in the Contender Series last year when Maximov, at like 206 pounds, took on a heavyweight that was like 40, 50 pounds heavier than him and, was able to handle him on the ground. But, his fight with Cody Brundage in the UFC was not that impressive to me at all. He looked very awkward on the feet, and he looks like Punahele Soriano could just take him apart. I mean, if he was awkward against Cody Brundage on the feet, I can only imagine how out of place he looks against Soriano this Saturday. Now, both guys are pretty young, obviously a 5-year age gap between them, but, both we can expect to make improvements at 29 and 24 years old, respectively. The size is about the same, big reach advantage by 4 inches for Nick Maximov. And like I said, he's got such an awkward style on the feet. I don't even know if he's going to be able to use that reach advantage to very much success. Now, Punahele Soriano impressed me because he was the guy that knocked out Duško Todorovic in round 1 and kind of exposed Duško as being a little bit chinny and a little bit defensively, liable. So I've been a fan of him since that. His only loss comes in his last fight against Brandon Allen, which, no shame there. Brandon Allen's a pretty good fighter, pretty proven fighter. So I don't think that's going to affect the outcome of this fight. And I think he's going to be chomping at the bit to expose Nick Maximov as kind of like a fraudulent prospect here. So give me Punahele Soriano to win this fight. I think he wins inside the distance, probably by TKO in round 1, in my opinion. All right, finally main event time. Jack Hermansson taking on Sean Strickland. Middleweight bout, and it kind of shows how much in shambles the middleweight division is in the UFC. I mean, the talent pool is just so shallow that I'm hearing conversations about like one of these two guys who wins this fight is, kind of like en route to the belt. And I don't know. I think whoever wins this fight, I think Adesanya would dust either one. And I don't know. But all that aside, I could rant about how crappy the middleweight division is all day in the UFC. But 30 years old for Sean Strickland, 33 for Jack Hermansson. Same height and only a reach difference of 1 inch, in the favor of Jack Hermansson. So, it's pretty obvious that the striking advantage goes to Sean Strickland. For as crazy as the guy is, he seems like kind of a psychopath in real life, but in the cage, he fights very, very smart. That's demonstrated through like his victory over Uriah Hall he just had, where he had, I think, a lot of opportunities to rush the pace of that fight. He had opportunities to kind of jump on Uriah Hall, jump on some opportunities and finish the fight, but he chose to just outpoint him, get a clear-cut decision, and I love the fight IQ that he showed against him. So we're looking at pretty long-rangey striker in Sean Strickland. Jack Hermansson looking to get this fight, into his realm, into the grappling world. He's got very dominating top control. He's very heavy on top of his opponents. Gets off some really good ground and pound, and he has his moments in the feet, too, against certain opponents, but I don't think he'll have many moments in the feet against Sean Strickland. I think his best path to victory is maintaining top control in a strong way, but I think he's going to have trouble to do that against Sean Strickland. And lately, everybody's talking about how great Sean Strickland looks on the ground. He's a jiu-jitsu player as well. I think he's like a brown belt now in jiu-jitsu, and fighting out of the camp that he's at. I mean, he's getting in rounds with over there in Vegas with Francis Ngannou. He's getting in rounds with guys like what's his name, Khamzat Chimaev. We've seen him get rounds in with. He's getting in rounds with like Magomed Ankalaev. So a lot of guys over there at Extreme Couture, and I don't know. It's just it just seems like everything is going into the favor of Sean Strickland. So. Give me Sean Strickland to win a clear-cut decision. I don't think he's going to finish Jack Hermansson. I think it'll be a 5-round decision fight. I think Sean's going to be very, very defensively sound against Hermansson. He's just so good at getting back up to his feet when he's in a grappling position. He's just always making his opponents work. So I think Jack Hermansson will tire out as this fight goes on, leading Sean Strickland even further into a lead and a clear-cut unanimous decision victory. Now, the current price tag on Sean Strickland is right around like minus 210 is the best you can get, minus 230. They come back about plus 190 on Jack Hermansson. I think that line is about fair. I think that's a pretty accurate representation of how I see this fight playing out most of the time. And I think that even leaves a little bit of value on Sean Strickland on the money line. But Jack Hermansson's a tough guy. He does have a path to victory in this fight. I'm probably going to stay off of this fight from a betting perspective as far as the money line goes. I could look at Strickland by decision, which is how I think he's going to win this fight. Strickland by decision. We're looking at like a plus 180, plus 175 for Strickland by decision. Even that, since he's such a slick, rangy striker, I could see him, I don't think that leaves enough value, enough meat on the bone at plus 175 by decision, especially over 5 rounds of opportunity to, possibly get us a finish over Hermansson. So I'd probably leave that prop alone as well, but give me Sean Strickland to win by decision. Okay, so that's the entire fight card breakdown for Jack Hermansson versus Sean Strickland this weekend. There's a lot of content to get through. I probably will be releasing just a standalone video of just a summary of some of the best props and best bets that I will be placing on this weekend's card, so look out for that. But good luck in all your betting action this weekend. See you next time.